Okay, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Chuck Pritchard with OSD Public Affairs. Of course, we have started out with a few administrative announcements, many of which you've heard before, but I'll go over them anyway. Today's session is on the record for attribution. We'll be recording the session and provide a transcript at some point down the road, and we have this scheduled for 30 minutes. Prior to asking a question, I ask that you please state your name and organization, and try to limit yourself to one question and one follow-up, and we'll try to get everybody in as best we can. I won't go over the reminder about not using your speakerphone or not, and to also use your mute button. And with that, I will now go into the introductions. I'd like to introduce the United States Transportation Command officials who have joined us on the phone from Transcom headquarters at Scott Air Base in Illinois. Each of them will provide a few opening comments. And so first up is Mr. Rick Marsh. He's the director of the Defense Personal Property Program, also known as DP3. And good afternoon, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. So first, all the reporters on the line, thanks for your time today. Appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing, not only to protect the force this summer, but also to improve the relocation experience for DoD families. And I look forward to taking your questions. As Secretary Esper briefed yesterday, DoD leaders have determined that some service members and families will proceed with permanent change of station moves under exceptions to the COVID-19 stop movement order. While U.S. Transcom doesn't play a role in deciding which personnel move, we are responsible for the program that moves their personal property between duty assignments once they've received direction to move. In an effort to protect the force and deliver a safe moving experience to DoD families, DoD has directed a series of health protection measures for personnel moving during the stop movement period. And I wanted to take a few minutes of my opening comments to walk through this plan. Because the relocation process is intrusive, with moving personnel working inside homes along DoD personnel and their families, DoD has directed that industry personnel adhere to Centers for Disease Control health protection protocols. Measures include wearing face coverings, minimizing the crew size to enable social distancing, routinely cleaning frequently touched surfaces, and simply practicing good hand hygiene while on the job site. When a moving crew arrives at the curb for a pack-out or delivery, moving companies will present written verification that members of the crew have been screened for illness and will be properly equipped to adhere to these protocols. So 2 quick points on this element of the plan. The first is that families are also responsible for complying with CDC protocols and installation guidelines during the movement process to protect themselves and moving personnel. We've also asked DoD personnel that to reschedule their move if they are ill, if anyone in the residence is ill, or if they've been directed to self-quarantine. The second point is that industry has been a superb partner in this. They recognize this is about people and are just as interested in protecting their own personnel as they are DoD personnel. We're also working hard to ensure DoD personnel know their decision authority. This is also important. Families are empowered to decide who enters their residence. They're empowered to question moving personnel and their adherence to these protocols. And they're empowered to say stop at any point in the process. If families aren't comfortable, they should stop work and reschedule their move, period. And while families are empowered to make decisions, they're not alone. A DoD representative will contact every DoD member during every move, in person or virtually, to ensure protocols are being followed. And if something's not right, local transportation offices and the personnel's chain of command will get involved to make it right. Leaders across DoD are focused on protecting the force during the relocation process and are similarly committed to driving broader reform across the personal property program. The award of the Global Household Goods contract is an important milestone of a broader reform effort and fundamentally restructures DoD's relationship with industry to address longstanding pain points DoD families have highlighted for years. I appreciate your time today, and I'm happy to take your questions on these topics.
Okay, thank you, sir. And now we go over to Mr. Ken Brennan, who is the Director of Acquisition. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk today exclusively about Global Household Goods contract. After over a year of requirements development, market research, acquisition strategy development, and proposal evaluations, U.S. Transcom Acquisition Directorate awarded the Global Household Goods contract, also known as GHC, on Thursday, 30 April. American Roll-On, Roll-Off Carrier Group Incorporated, which I'll use the shorthand ARC, of Parsippany, New Jersey, was competitively awarded GHC, which provides relocation services, including door-to-door moving services for our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardmen, and DoD civilians and their families during permanent change of station, or PCS, moves. After evaluating all 7 competing proposals submitted for GHC consideration, U.S. Transcom selected ARC because their proposal provided the best service for the best value for our service members, DoD civilians, and their families, beating out all other 6 competing proposals. With the award last Thursday of the 3-year base contract, valued at approximately $7.2 billion, ARC has begun work on information technology integration and the preparations to begin the first phase of domestic moves in February of 2021, and is set to achieve full domestic and international execution of the approximately 400,000 moves annually by 2022. The GHC contract is an important component of improving service members' experiences during the relocation process and fundamentally restructures DoD's relationship with the household goods industry in order to improve access to and management of quality capacity to meet peak demand and enable the department to affix the accountability and responsibility lacking in today's program. I, too, am happy to take any questions about the contract award after our opening statements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And lastly, I would like to introduce U.S. Air Force Chief Master Sgt. Jason France, who is a Transcom Senior Enlisted Leader. Good afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon, and I would also like to say thanks for all the reporters on the line for allowing us this opportunity to talk about these 2 very important topics. Now, specific to the award of the Global Household Goods Contract, this is an absolute win for our service members, Department of Defense employees, and our families. This puts us on the right path to fixing issues that have plagued the Defense Personal Property Program for years. I've moved 15 times in my 30-year career, 9 of those moves with a family. I fully understand the stresses and frustrations associated with military moves, and I'm absolutely confident that we will now be able to deliver the quality service that our people and our families deserve going into the future. There has been an incredible amount of teamwork to get us here. From the service members and families who shared their experiences and recommendations with us, to leaders across the department, including all of the services, who are all committed to improving the moving process and taking care of our people and our families. And that is what this effort has been all about from the start, taking care of our people and our families. I'm also happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll go straight to the phones. Jeff, you're up first.
Thank you. Can you say how many families do you expect to be able to make the PCS moves under the exceptions outlined by DoD? Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, this is Rick Marsh. Thanks for the question. So right now, there are over 30,000 families with booking requests in the queue who are seeking an exception to policy.
Thank you. And they're all going to move this summer? Is that what you're saying?
So those are the families who have been approved or authorized to move, and if conditions allow, we'll proceed with their PCS.
Okay. We're going to move on now to Karen.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. Just as a follow-up on Jeff's question, are you considering extending moves through the end of the year possibly because of the situation?
Hey, Karen, this is Rick Marsh again. Absolutely. So the 30,000 I mentioned to Jeff is what we have, in the system now that's been approved. The services, the personnel communities are working to identify their projections for the rest of the year, and the demand will be significant. So I absolutely anticipate moves going well into the fall and early winter. I think this year that the notion of the typical peak season as we know it historically.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask another question, or do you need to go on to the next person?
No, go ahead. You can do a follow-up.
Okay. In terms of the new contract, how will this new program improve the capacity in the system, and how will it improve the quality of moves for service members?
Hey, Karen, this is Rick Marsh again. So I think there's a couple components to that. So the first is understanding our business model currently, where it is transactional in nature. We don't have an enduring contract, an enduring relationship with any of the providers in the program. So first, entering into a multi-year relationships provides industry with the confidence and rationale to invest in capacity and strategic relationships with their own network to meet our peak demand. The second aspect of it is capacity management. By centralizing our demand planning with a single entity, we will be able to improve utilization of available capacity in a way we can't do under the current model. Again, where we have dozens of DoD offices awarding traffic on a shipment by shipment basis, with no planning or forecast for industry to work off of. And then lastly, and most importantly, is the accountability piece. Before the Global Household Goods contract, we did not have a formal contract with household good providers and could not hold them accountable in any meaningful way.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Moving on, we'll go to Chris, and tell us who you work for, Chris.
Chris Anderson, AWPS News. So I'm curious about the accountability piece. How will that work? Because I know that one of the most difficult things about a move is your treasured things arrive, but maybe they don't all arrive, or maybe they are in the same condition that you entered as when you packed them. So how will that work? Because this has been an issue for a lot of families, I think. Thank you.
No, this is Rick again, and you're exactly right. Claims due to loss and damage are the top issue in the current program. So there's a couple of pieces to that. So the first goes back to the business model, right? Under our transactional approach, there is where you have again no rationale to invest in quality suppliers and invest in your network when you can't forecast the work that you're going to perform. Our current model leads to using day laborers and other folks that maybe aren't as well trained as moving professionals should be. So again, by centralizing our demand, we're sending a very clear signal to industry of what our demand is, what they can expect to move, and they can hire and invest in very highly trained employees to come into service member homes to handle their pack out or delivery. On the accountability side, we have a global network today of personal property offices. Over 300 personal property offices at the installation office level, and then another 42 shipping offices around the globe, who are all going to be, through Mr. Brennan's office on the acquisition side, formally appointed contracting officers and quality assurance evaluators, who are going to be working off of a centralized quality assurance surveillance plan to ensure we have accurate, rigorous oversight over the contract. And then when it comes to for the family, when an issue does arrive, most of the issues that we have in the current program revolve around communication. So we're going to be able to bring tools to the table that we simply can't deliver today under the current program, to be able to put families in touch with representatives from industry faster, to make the claims process much cleaner, much simpler, and for them to have it settled and to be made whole much faster than they are today.
Okay, Chris, you have a follow-up?
So I'm wondering about the claims process. Could you talk a little bit more about that? It's going to be cleaner and faster. Will this mean that folks will have ahead of time understand how to access and use the communication system for that purpose? Thank you.
So I think your question was about a new system that would be a new system that would be fielded. Do I have that right?
And I'm wondering how will it work if part of the quality of service is based on the ability of families to follow up on claims when things don't go well or as they anticipated. You know, if something is missing, where's my furniture, or something arrives and it's not in the condition that it was packed. All of those things. Knowing ahead of time what you can do, whether there's one person to contact or whether there's a specific dedicated contact system, and how to use that might ease some of that stress of moving. And so that's what I'm curious about. Is that changing and improving? And if you could speak to that a little bit, that would be great. Thank you.
No, thanks for the clarification. So that is absolutely one of the things we're looking to change. You know, one of the complaints in the current program is that you have 4 or 5 or 6 people calling you and telling you that they're the single point of contact. They have different company names, and it's confusing. It's even worse when the IT that we use or that our partners use, it's not up to the level that DoD families certainly demand in their personal life, and certainly not up to the level that they deserve for something as important as a PCS. So yeah, so one of the requirements that we have is that the PMARC, the contractor, provides a single point of contact to a family. That is the point of contact for the duration of the move, from the moment they receive orders and potentially receive counseling through claim settlement.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to go on to Marcus.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I kind of got a tangential question. When General Lyons spoke to us about a month or so ago, he talked about the health of the commercial carriers that you guys use to move passengers and cargo, air carriers, that is. I was wondering if you've lost any carriers. I know Miami Air filed for bankruptcy, and with the commercial airlines being well down in their demand right now, have you brought on any new ones, or do you look to expand? Thanks.
Yeah, this is Ken Brennan, Director of Acquisition. A little bit different than the GHC, but it is something that we are looking at daily. We have been engaged with industry on a daily basis and actually have regular biweekly segment discussions with the air, the surface, and the shipping entities. And we have been working with them to track their COVID response and ensure that the business base is capable and continues to be capable throughout the COVID and recovery.
Marcus, you have a follow-up?
Yes. Can you say if you've lost any carriers?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question for me? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, sure. Have you lost any carriers? Have any carriers gone out of business or just unable to operate just due to lack of their other typical business that they have that declined?
No, we have not seen any declination, and as part of that, we are actually one of the more active customer sectors still around in providing demand signal, although we see that rebounding a little bit with the worldwide recovery. But we have not lost anyone individually.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we go to Ellen.
I'm very interested in how the carriers will be certifying to the families the health of their crews. I mean, how do you do that? Are the carriers expected to positively test everybody? How is that going to work, and what evidence should the families be looking for?
Hey, this is Rick Marsh again. Thanks for the question. So what we've directed the industry to do is be very familiar with CDC guidelines, which change, right? I mean, two weeks ago now there's 9. So the first piece of it is having the TSPs, the transportation service providers, be familiar, be educated on what the symptoms are, and then to screen the personnel, before they're sent to a home, screen them for those symptoms, and if there's an issue, make sure that they're not included on that crew, and direct the crew member to medical attention as necessary. And then the second piece of that, to your question, was so how is that verified to the family? So what we've directed industry to do is to present a form that says, hey, I certify that these folks have been screened to the best of my ability. I sent them to your home, and that is left with the family, so that the family is not responsible for asking those questions or for driving enforcement.
And hello, Ellen. This is Chief France. Also, to follow up on Mr. Marsh's point, the family is actually going to receive. Each family will receive an email describing all of this, so they know exactly what to expect of the carrier, and they know exactly what they can do if they run into one of these challenges with a carrier.
Sorry, I forgot I was on speaker. In following up, so the family isn't satisfied or they get bad vibes from the certification they've been handed. They say, no, we don't want you. How fast is the carrier expected to send another crew out?
So I think this is Rick again. So I think that becomes situation dependent, right? I mean, the most important thing in this is that the family is comfortable, and then they're not being put in a position that they don't want to be in. So I mean, that is the comfort of the personnel, the protection of the force. And that's what matters here, not a moving timeline. That said, then the family simply needs to call the transportation office and their chain of command to work with having it rescheduled.
Okay.
Hey, but here's my question. A family might be up under a deadline. They have a week to get to the next station. They have to get their stuff put on the truck. They don't feel comfortable with the crew, but they're told by their local office that another move can't be scheduled for another 3 weeks. They're still in a corner.
Yeah, hello, Ellen. This is Chief France again. This also comes down to that service members' engagement with their chain of command and the transportation office, so they can work together to come up with a reasonable solution on behalf of the DoD and behalf of that service provider to get that rescheduled.
Hi, this is Christina Wong from Breitbart. Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
I said earlier I didn't have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. How many families in total have moved as exceptions, overall, in addition to the 30,000 that's been approved to date?
Hey, this is Rick Marsh. So since the initial stop movement order in early March, just over 12,500 shipments.
Okay, 12,500 shipments. And then, so the 30,000, can you go into a little bit more detail on exactly sort of what the timeline is, like how quickly they should be able to move and when those moves might be completed? Is that something that could happen like in a week or like 2 weeks, or, when are they expected to complete their move?
So those 30,000 are through the end of the current stop movement period of 30 June. So they all have they've received an approval to move. They've communicated their preferred move date to the transportation office, and they have a date lined up in the system that aligns with the week of their preferred pickup. So all those 30,000 are in various stages of processing. Some are in the queue, some are being counseled, some have been awarded to a TSP. Some have had the pre-move survey done. But that 30,000 represents what we have visibility of as pickups through 30 June.
Okay, and so there might be more families having to move before then, and are they expected to complete their move before June, or they're just sort of June 30th, or they're just in the queue, and they could move, like, say, in August or something?
So families could get added. I'm confident we'll see additional families, shipment requests get added to the queue for movement. And this is pickups between now and 30 June, not necessarily deliveries. As you know, depending on where they're traveling, will drive when they arrive. Depending on this is and will remain conditions based. If conditions don't allow a shipment to happen, I could also see shipments being shifted to the right. Going back to the discussion on if families aren't comfortable or if conditions change in a location, I absolutely envision shipments being rescheduled.
I see. Thank you so much for doing this. And is there what can families do if the movers come and they don't feel comfortable? Is there like a phone line they can call or something, or and then how do you ensure the movers know how to follow protocol?
So if a family's not comfortable, they should absolutely reach out to the transportation office. The numbers on their the documentation they receive from the transportation office. They should absolutely contact their chain of command, and if they can absolutely reach out to their service headquarters or to U.S. Transportation Command for help. As far as how on the verification piece, this gets back to the department's direction to make sure that we have DoD personnel touching base with every family and every move to ensure the protocols are being followed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, and this is Chief France with a follow-up on that too. During this process, a DoD representative is required to reach out to that family at some point. So if there ever comes a situation where a family may feel hesitant for whatever reason to engage directly with that moving company, they will have a member of or a DoD representative contacting them sometime throughout the process, and that's another avenue for those families to get help if they need it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We don't have any questions here in the room, so we have time on the phone for one more last question, if anybody has one. Going once, twice. Okay, so we'll go back to the gentleman.
Never mind. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
It's Karen from Military Times again. So that 12,500 that have moved, what percentage of the usual volume is that? And has there been any evidence of a change in the quality of moves over this time? For example, have the customer satisfaction ratings gone up?
Hey, Karen, this is Rick Marsh. So we're at about 30% of typical volumes, where we'd be this time each year. I haven't seen any. I think it's too early to get the returns on the customer satisfaction surveys to see where that stands. But we have gotten good feedback from families who have highlighted the TSPs following these protocols, TSPs communicating ahead of time, to describe how the move was going to happen and the things that they were going to do to keep them safe. So as far as the formal satisfaction survey goes, I think it's too early. But we've gotten some good spot reporting, anecdotes from families that they've been comfortable so far with what industry's been doing.
Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. I appreciate it. We'll go back to the gentleman at Transcom for some closing remarks. Chief France, do you have any parting words for us?
No, again, I just appreciate the opportunity to allow us to discuss this very important topic with representing our service members and families.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Brennan?
I did have one follow-up to the last question about the experience that the people that are currently moving are and receiving. This goes back a little bit to the earlier question about the industrial base. Those 12,500 moves actually represent a desirable workload for those vendors. So our current process has its own vetting already, but they're also competitive in wanting to participate in that workload. By way of closing remarks, I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Global Household Goods contract and COVID. Both are going to continue to be implementation challenges in this new and challenging environment. But we think that we are set up to provide an improved capacity and capability for our warfighters and look forward to teaming with Team ARC as we address the service members and their families' concerns regarding PCS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And lastly, Mr. Marsh.
Hey, thanks again to all that participated. Just to clarify the timeline, just to hit that home that Chief France and Mr. Brennan made on the Global Household Goods contract. All of the moves this season, all of the moves that we're talking about now for the rest of 2020 will be under the current process, right? As Mr. Brennan mentioned, we're excited to get Global Household Goods contract fielded, but it won't be until February of 2021. We've got a very deliberate transition period in place to make sure that we're teed up for success. And then the earlier questions on quality, what else are we doing to improve quality? How will Team ARC deliver a quality experience? A lot of that is going to be through. There are some great quality, small business, some great quality providers in the current program. There is and will be a place for each of them under the Global Household Goods contract. If they deliver a quality product today, I mean, their services are going to be required as long as DoD moves personnel and families around the globe. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and very grateful for your time out here.
Okay, thank you, sir. And with that, we'll bring this to a close. Thank you all for participating. If you have any follow-up questions that you think about, you can send them to the OSD Public Affairs Duty Officer, and we'll run down the info for you. So that's all for now. Out here.